Welcome to CAI Report. I'm Henry Kriegel, Executive Director of the Coachella Valley. With me today is a familiar face to you, Stephen Shuey. Steve, welcome again.
Good to see you.
All right. Stephen is a past president of the Coachella Valley Chapter Board of Directors. He's a long-standing manager here in the Valley, and as you know, he's also one of the hosts on CAI Report. I think you're familiar with CAI. We're a national organization that serves homeowner associations across the country. Here in Southern California, there are 5 chapters. The Coachella Valley chapter, there's a very large chapter in San Diego, another large chapter headquartered in Mission Viejo, another large chapter headquartered in Riverside, there's a chapter in Los Angeles, and there's a chapter for the Channel Islands. And all of us do basically the same thing. We try to educate people who live in homeowner associations about what life in a homeowner association is like. It's a little bit different. We try to, most of all, professionalize the managers. We put them through some rather rigorous programming, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Stephen, because you've earned some of those. Yeah,
in fact, you know, I was thinking about that. The way they do that, of course, is their regular monthly breakfast meetings to get the opportunity to network and get the education that various speakers bring. But on top of that, there's actual educational courses that we take to get certified or to just get the education on how to be a professional manager, how to be a good board member. All these kinds of classes CAI has available. The ABC course, for example, which is that course that's the beginning of being a board member. It goes through all the nuances of being on a community board. These board members ought to be clamoring to get those courses, and every chapter offers them. So they're great classes to have. As a PCAM myself, I'm considered to be a professional community association manager. That's a designation that I have that I earned through taking a number of courses and passing an extensive examination. So what it did, I think it was kind of great for me, was it reminded me of the fact that I really do know what I'm talking about. I did what was tantamount to a thesis in order to get this qualification as a PCAM, and that really made me feel like, okay, yeah, you know, I thought I knew what I was talking about. Now I really believe I do, because I was able to take that test and pass that course. And the courses aren't difficult. They do take some time. A manager or a board member needs to have that time available. But boy, are they great. And CAI offers them pretty much the same throughout the country. Yes. In California, we have certain laws that are different. So some of the courses have special portions of it that are set to the state that people are in, like here in California.
You know, if you're living in a homeowner association, I think you should do everything you can to encourage first of all, your manager to be professionally certified so that he or she really knows what they're doing, because it's a complicated situation today. And the same with your board members. Insist that they take these ABC courses or attend these breakfast seminars, because they're just chock full of information to help serve homeowner associations.
I have to tell you, Henry, you know, when you talk about the board member being educated, that is so important, because in most communities, the manager is managing multiple associations. The manager's not spending all of their time dedicated to one association. Now, of course, that doesn't apply to that manager who is stationed on site at one community, but that's not the case in most cases. Most of them manage multiple communities. They need a board member or a set of board members that really do understand what they're there for and what they're doing. And those ABC courses and the M100 course that CAI offers, I think they're great courses to help the board members become aware.
You know, being a board member today is getting more and more complicated, because they can be personally liable. They've got to know what they're talking about, the decisions they're making, the manner in which they go about doing it, and how they treat people in the homeowner association.
Oh, it's so important. And it's amazing how many of them have been in business, for example, and they know how to run their corporations, their big businesses. Well, this is a corporation also, but it's a whole different process. Yes. It's more like being a city council person and being the mayor of a city, if you're the chairman of the board. I mean, it's just a big different deal, but yeah, there's a lot to learn. And the nice thing is, CAI, every chapter has educational sessions available where the attorneys come in, for example, and they share with us the new laws that are coming into play. What a great opportunity that is. Yes. to help understand how to make our associations run better.
Yeah, and just to be aware of all these new laws, because they're just constantly evolving and changing.
Constantly changing.
And it puts pressure on you. How do you interact with your board?
You know, in my case, case, Henry, I manage a single community, but I have 4 associations within that community. So I have 3 7-member boards, and then I have a board of 5 that consists mostly of those other board members called the Master Association. So I'm interacting with basically 22 people on my various boards. That's not a difficult task, actually, because they're all managing one community, and they have their specific responsibilities as far as what part of the association they govern. I have a situation where, because I'm on site and they prefer to run their operation like a corporation, kind of like General Motors would operate, where the board of General Motors is not making cars. The board is not there telling the guy on the assembly line how to put the car together. They're giving the big picture. Here's the kind of cars we want to build this year. And now you go out and build the cars. Well, in the case of HOA management and my style, the style we have at Desert Island, is the board sets the big picture. They tell us what they want to see as a community, and they depend on management to manage that community. We facilitate getting what they want done. Now, when it comes to things like the road needs repaving or the roof needs to be redone, yes, management's expected to come to the board and say, by the way, it's looking like you need to have this maintenance performed, and then the board has to look at it and say, how does that fit in the budget? Oftentimes they come right back to management. Have you looked at the budget? How does it fit? And we explain to them how it fits in the budget. Do we have enough money or don't we? And we share all that with them, and we act as a team. That's what's really nice in my case in particular, and I think most boards operate this way with their management. They act as a team. They work together to make all these decisions, so that when they get down to deciding, okay, yes, we're going to get the roof done, yes, we're going to use this specific contractor and pay this particular price, and yes, we have enough money in the budget, or maybe we don't and we have to assess for it, but all those decisions are made interactively together. And in my case, that's exactly how it's done. We share with the board what's coming up, what needs to get done. They look at it, and having heard from us what's available fund-wise, they make the decision to go ahead and get it done, and then they expect us to handle it. What's nice about most boards, and my boards are this way, is they are the communications link to the people who live there. Since they live in the community, they're able to talk to their neighbors about the fact that boards talked about this, we're about to get this project taken care of. So they play a big part in the PR operation.
Do some boards sort of micromanage?
Oh, Henry, I've heard horror stories about that, because some people, let's say the retired person who comes out of a corporation where he was the chairman of the board in his corporation, in that business atmosphere, he ran the ship. He gave the orders, he pointed his finger, this is how I want it done in detail, because he owned the corporation perhaps. Well, yeah, they come on to a homeowners association board, they get elected on the board, they become chairman perhaps, and they feel like that's how it's supposed to happen. They don't tend to realize that, whoa, back off here. You're dealing with people. You know, HOA management's a lot about maintaining the community, but it's a lot about maintaining the people who live in that community as well. So yeah, it does happen, but if they have a good, qualified, certified community association manager, hopefully they can stem that off and not have a problem with that. Help that board member realize that they're not there to micromanage. They're really there to give the big picture operation.
And you know, if we can get more and more of our managers certified, which I think is happening increasingly, then we've got a professional quality group of people who are able to even train their own boards and help them understand. And I think, you know, something like our monthly breakfast seminars and those types of programs are invaluable for board members, just to know what's going on and how they can best interact. We're going to take a short break, and I hope you'll stay with us. When we return, we're going to talk about living in a homeowner association. What's some of the complications? What's some of the shortfalls? Stay with us. We'll be right back.
When I talk about reading the documents, there are basically 3 rather voluminous documents you have to look at.
CAI Report is brought to you by Bright and Clean Windows. Trust Southern California's favorite window cleaning company to provide consistent, quality window cleaning service to your home and office. Let Bright and Clean Windows make you look great by removing hard water stains from windows and shower door enclosures, and by cleaning windows and mirrors to a gleaming shine. Call 346-9274. And by Diamond Fusion, a patented award-winning technology that transforms ordinary shower glass and porcelain into low-maintenance surfaces, used by manufacturers like DuPont and by homeowners and resorts to maintain a clean image and save money while making life easier by making cleaning easier. Call 773-2825.
This is Mary Howell with the law firm of Epstein, Grinnell & Howell. With 3 Southern California locations and 20 attorneys, we offer prompt legal advice to homeowners associations. We can help you build a better neighborhood. Give us a call.
Epstein, Grinnell & Howell, helping you survive a legal sea of change.
Welcome back. We're going to talk about living in a homeowner association. Many of us who moved to Southern California have never lived in a homeowner association before, and sometimes there's some rough roads with it. Stephen, let's say I'm moving here from Chicago. I'm retired, I've had a great life, and I want to buy into a homeowner association. Never lived in one in my life.
It's hot here, Henry, come on.
Oh, compared to Chicago, this is wonderful. I'll take it any day.
So you're really looking at finding out what you need to know?
Yes.
You're going to want to buy into one?
Yes.
Oh, I got to tell you, Henry, one of the most important things, and people do miss out on this, they need to read the governing documents of that association.
Oh, but Stephen, those things are that thick. What do you mean?
They are, and maybe it isn't a matter of reading every line, but boy, if you miss the line that says you can't do this and that's what you really want to do, you've missed an important point. Another thing you can do, and I want to get back on that reading thing for just a minute, but you can talk to the community manager or people who live in the community and find out what's going on. Share with them what your values are, what you're hoping to get out of living in this community, and find out from them how they like living there. That's not always easy to do, but the real estate agent that you buy with can help you do that. Get introduced to the manager and ask them to go over with you how is the community governed? Mm-hmm. And then that interactive conversation will make reading all those documents a whole lot easier. When I talk about reading the documents, there are basically 3 rather voluminous documents you have to look at. The first one, the primary document, is the CC&Rs. That's short for covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Restrictions really isn't the big part of that. It's covenants and conditions. That document sets the big picture for the community. Here's how we were intended to be as a community. And then another document is the bylaws. The bylaws tell the organization how it's going to operate. They set the standard for how many board meetings are going to have, how many people on the board, things like that, the governance issues of the operation of the HOA. And then there is the rules and regulations. That's also a part of the governing documents. Now with these 3 sets of documents, the first one, the CC&Rs, is set up in such a way that none of that gets changed without a clear vote of the people. They have control as a body to decide if those are going to ever get changed. A ballot measure goes out. They're complicated to get done, by the way. To get little amendments done isn't always easy because it does require what they call a supermajority vote. It's not just 51%, it's usually 60%, sometimes 75% in order to get one of the measures passed. The bylaws is very similar in nature, but that again is governing the organizational operations. So that's not something the homeowners are all that concerned about so much, but they need to be. The other one, the rules and regulations, that one, the board makes up those rules and regulations, and in today's world, they need to pass it to the homeowners with a review kind of atmosphere. Look these over, this is what we're about to pass. Give them 30 days to comment on the rules, bring the comments back to the board, and the board can make that rule or decide to change the rule based on the comments they get, but there's no voting process. If the board deems that this is an important rule, we have to have it, then that's one of the rules. So I think for the party that's moving into a community, say you're moving into Chicago like you suggest, then I think the first document, the easiest one, is the rules and regulations. It's probably the smallest of all the documents. The next one would be the CC&Rs because that one's got the real key points. That's probably the document that says don't park your motorhome on the street, or no street parking after 11 o'clock at night, or things like that that you really want to be aware of. And then the bylaws, if you're interested in knowing how does the HOA really operate, how many meetings do they have, how many people on the board, those kinds of things. You want to get into that as well. But yeah, there are a lot of documents there, Henry, but you got to read them.
Do any associations do something like a like an orientation for new members? Do the realtors do an orientation thing for new members?
You know, Henry, sadly, the real estate agent doesn't hardly even know what's going on in the community. They're busy selling properties in numbers of communities. To know the intimate details of a particular community is difficult for them to do. But the HOA really needs to have an orientation for the new buyer coming in. It's typical that that happens after they've signed the dotted line and paid their money, after the close of escrow. That's when that orientation comes to play. But even then, it's really important. And yes, a number of communities are doing that, but there's a whole lot of communities that just don't have a way of making that happen. My recommendation for all communities is that they actually get some kind of a welcome wagon kind of committee. Take a couple of board members and a couple of other homeowners and go down the street and introduce yourself to those new people who just bought in, and do it in a really friendly way. Part of the problem that many board members get into is the first thing they want to do is say, by the way, you can't do this and you can't do that, and don't do this and don't do that. Well, that turns off the new homeowner. The real thing to do is to go in and say, to welcome them and help them see the wonderful things we have in this community, and then touch on those things that they need to be careful not to allow to have happen. Take my community, for example. I manage a high-rise community. Just moving in is a process in itself because there's an elevator they have to make use of. They're tying up the entry to the building, tying up the elevator, and probably tying up portions of the corridor that leads to their unit. Why, we need to get to them right off the bat so that we can help them understand the best way to make that happen so they don't disturb their neighbors. Well, that sounds like a lot of don't do this and don't do that. All we do is make sure we structure that language so that it says, here's the right way to do it that works very well so you don't disturb your neighbors. And I have to tell you, having done it for the last 15 years or so, it works.
It's just a matter of creating harmony for people.
That's really what it is.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue to explore some more of this because it's different living in a homeowner association. Stay tuned.
You are sharing with your neighbors, first of all, some expenses on the maintenance of the community, but you're also sharing a lifestyle.
CAI Report is brought to you by Bright and Clean Windows. Trust Southern California's favorite window cleaning company to provide consistent, quality window cleaning service to your home and office. Let Bright and Clean Windows make you look great by removing hard water stains from windows and shower door enclosures and by cleaning windows and mirrors to a gleaming shine. Call 346-9274. And by Diamond Fusion, a patented award-winning technology that transforms ordinary shower glass and porcelain into low-maintenance surfaces, used by manufacturers like DuPont and by homeowners and resorts to maintain a clean image and save money while making life easier by making cleaning easier. Call 773-2825.
Are you getting the most out of your banking relationship? At Community Association Bank, we exclusively serve community associations and professional management companies, saving you time by handling your banking transactions at your office. Community Association Bank. One bank, multiple options, maximum returns. Alante Insurance Services is a leader in serving the HOA community for over 20 years, offering homeowners association insurance, fidelity bond insurance, earthquake insurance, employee benefits insurance. We provide the fully integrated service TOPS, providing the optimum protection service. Alante Insurance Services, a division of Millennium Corporate Solutions.
Welcome back. Stephen Shuey and I are talking today about living in a homeowner association, particularly if you're a first time moving into a homeowner association, say here in Southern California. Stephen, you were just talking about how important it is to read the CC&Rs and the rules and regulations, the bylaws, get to know your neighbors and how things operate in an association. You know, I lived in a nice suburb. I did my own lawn. I noticed I wanted to put awnings up here, and I noticed there are no awnings on any of the houses here, and I'm confused about that. Are you saying I'm going to be limited in some of these things by living in a homeowner association?
Yes, Henry, you are, but not in a sad way. The fact is that when you lived in that suburban neighborhood and you did all your own lawns and you were able to put up that awning without asking permission from anybody, that was nice and it was comfortable. But when you moved into a homeowners association, one of the reasons you're choosing to live there is because it is a common interest development. You are sharing with your neighbors, first of all, some expenses on the maintenance of the community, but you're also sharing a lifestyle. You, as a neighborhood, you've considered how you want the neighborhood to look. So for you to come up and put an awning up when none of your neighbors have an awning, your house is going to stand out like a sore thumb. And in fact, your neighbors might look at that and go, he's just ruined the whole neighborhood. I can't stand that awning that you think is so beautiful. So that's kind of what we're talking about. We talk about covenants and conditions. They want things to look in a planned manner. It doesn't mean it can't change, where the community can decide we'd like every house to have an awning here because we think that's energy efficient to keep the sun from beating in the windows, and then decide that's common for the community. But the same thing applies to that lawn mowing situation. Chances are you'll move into a community where maybe you don't have to mow the lawn anymore. Now the paid landscaper, paid by the common interest, by the community, is doing all the lawns, and you want particular flowers in front of your house. Well, you may not be able to get that exactly. And that's again because it's you have a committee, a landscape committee, who's making a decision based on the big picture of the entire association. And you may want blue flowers in front of your place, but your neighbors are red and green, and blue doesn't fit in very well, or something like that. And the landscape committee is looking at a bigger picture. You're looking at your house, they're looking at the neighborhood. So yeah, you're going to see that, but it's not a sad situation, because you find when you step back and look at the entire community, oh yeah, I see how it all fits together very nicely. And that's also one of the things you want to look at when you're deciding to buy in a community. Take a look around the community and see if what you see there fits into your lifestyle.
Okay. You know, one of the things in moving into a homeowner association also is the monthly assessment. I'm going to pay $500, maybe more than that a month to live in that association. But I was thinking, I'm presently paying someone $150 a month to do my lawn and trim all the shrubbery, etc. I'm paying a pool man over $100 a month. I'm paying the exterminator $30 a month to come. I'm paying all these little things individually, and if I move into a homeowner association, then that's all lumped in with my assessment, isn't it?
That's a good way to look at it, Henry. In fact, that's exactly right. You know, when you own your own home, you're actually taking care of all that maintenance individually. Right. And when you move into this community, some of those expenses are shared with your neighbors, and your cost, your personal cost, actually goes down. You may look at this $500 a month maintenance fee and compare it to all the different individual expenses you had in your own home and find that it compares favorably. What you don't see, and what is really important to know about, is that in that $500 a month maintenance fee, there's likely a reserve allocation. That reserve allocation is taking care of the future maintenance. So for example, in your home that you lived in back in Chicago, you probably had to replace the roof on occasion, or certainly do major repairs to it on occasion, and you suddenly had to come up with the money to do that. I doubt you put money aside in the bank just for your roof. In the homeowners association, the nice thing is that's exactly what they're doing. A portion of that maintenance fee, whatever the amount is being set aside in a reserve fund for the future replacement of that roof. And so when you look at those dollars, it really is a savings, because what adds up to that so-called $500 also includes an amount for the reserve. And that's really taking care of the future maintenance that you no longer have to worry about. So you don't have to come up with that $10,000 to fix your roof. It's already built into a fund you are saving up for month after month.
Aren't there some occasions, though, in a homeowner association where there's a special assessment to cover, let's say, if they're going to put new roofs on? Does that happen often?
Sadly, I have to say sadly on this one, it does. But it does because the board is not looking correctly at their budgets and their need to budget correctly. They need to look at those future replacement issues. There is now what's called a reserve study that homeowner associations need to perform. Have a consultant come in, do a study on what needs to be reserved for, how much money do you need to set aside for the reserve components, and if they do that correctly, the chance of an assessment's a lot less. But if they don't do it correctly, if they don't save enough money for the future replacement of those roofs, when the failure finally occurs, you haven't got enough money, there may be a special assessment for that. Now, even if you do save enough money for all the future repairs and maintenance of the existing amenities in the community, there might be a case where the community decides, oh, we'd like to add an amenity. Let's say, for example, you never had a tennis court, but you want to add a tennis court because there's a perfect spot for it over here. Well, that wouldn't be reserved for, because it's not an existing amenity. It's a future amenity that you'd like to buy. And most of the governing documents say that the community needs to agree on that in advance and then pay for it, pony up the money for it. So they'd have a special assessment for that.
So you're saying a reserve specialist would come in and look at the roofs, look at the roads, all of these different things, and say, you know, in 5 years you're going to have to replace these roads, so you should be setting aside this much money. Is that basically?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And the nice thing is there are people who are reserve specialists. In fact, CAI has educational courses for those people so that they can become reserve specialists, understand what the needs are in communities, and be able to analyze all of that correctly. It doesn't require that you use a reserve specialist, but that's the recommendation. A board could in fact do it themselves, but they're taking on a lot of responsibility and liability if they make the wrong decisions. They really should call for an outside expert that can look at it from outside. You know how it is, that outside looking in kind of picture? It really makes a difference. They can see things that the people who live right on top of it miss, the forest for the trees kind of issue. And I think that getting that reserve study done is going to open their eyes to a big picture. And by the way, in the current reserve studies that most reserve analysts do, they give a 30-year cash flow projection. So they're looking at it 30 years down the road. In 10 years, you're going to spend thousands of dollars on this one, and in 15 years, you're going to spend another $5,000. And how much is that going to affect how much cash you have available to do all these projects? That really gives the board a good working tool on how they're going to spend their money over a course of time.
But if that's the case, you know, it's sounding like, though I surrender a few things by moving into a homeowner association, I'm also getting a lot better security. I don't mean necessarily security from vandals or thieves, but I mean the security of okay, I'm going to be safe for 30 years in here.
Property
Things
values.
are planned, right? My property is going to increase. It has to do with
property values, Henry. You know, when they have their reserve set up correctly, and when the community decides to act on those maintenance issues, if they plan to replace the roofs in 30 years, don't put it off because you don't think you have the money. Obviously, you need to have the money to do that. But if it's due and it's necessary, get it done, because it maintains the property values. That's the kind of security that these buyers today really look for.
Thank you for being with us. I think you've gotten an insight again into life in a homeowner association. And thanks, Stephen, for sharing your expertise again with us. I'm Henry Kriegel, Executive Director of the Coachella Valley Chapter of CAI. Hope to see you again next week.